Dear Lord, I will thank you this morning for the gift of life, for your grace and your mercy. As we are going to study your word, we ask that may your spirit be in our presence, and may you impress upon our hearts a desire to continue to learn. And we pray that may your grace continue to abide with us. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So I've sent a PDF document on the group, which I hope everyone can see. So I encourage that everyone may you open that document. I can see we have quite a good number in class. I hope each and every one of us will get an opportunity to read as we are going to be going through this study together. So it's a study that was done by Elder Paminda on April 22, 2020 in Portugal. This was a Portugal camp. It was a school. So I like the fact that this was done in a slow fashion, like step by step, especially on how to approach the subject that was being discussed. So it's a very interesting study that when I was looking at what to share, it resonates in my mind a lot of answers to the experience the movement has been going through for quite a number of years, even what also some individuals might be going through in our personal Christian experience. So it's a study that touches one of our deepest and close experience. Each and every one of us will go through this almost on a daily basis. So I hope when we are done reviewing this study, it will help a lot of us to reflect and reconsider our faith. That's my humble desire. So we can go to that document if we can. I will be showing my board here and there when there's something I want us to see, but I'm not going to be drawing reform lines or anything. So most of what we are discussing is in the document, but if there's anything I need to show, I'll just open my camera and show that. So the title of this study is Control Your Feelings. And the questions which were coming in this class are going to touch on a number of issues. So the chapter that was looked at, it's how the Bible gives us counsel or direction when it comes to our feelings. So as we can see in the document, this study is based on Luke 6, verse 37 and 38. So before we start reading, there are two things that I just want us to remember. The two keys that we should always remember to this issue. I'm going to show, I think, so on the board I've put the two keys that we should always remember. It's number one, context, and the second key, it's methodology. This should be in the back of our mind, whether it's a situation or it's a scenario, it's a life experience, because in most cases, we tend to forget these two and we handle situations the way we feel it's right in our own opinion. And that's where most of the time, either we hate ourselves more or we feel like we are victims because we don't want to apply these two keys. But for me, these two keys will always help us to be safe when it comes to how we respond to certain scenarios in our life experience. So we are going to start going through this study. So I'm going to read the introductory thoughts and then I'll give others a chance as we go along. So in Luke chapter 6, verse 38 talks about giving, and it should be given unto you. If you look at verse 37, it's talking about judging. So we see that it's same principles. One tells you to do something and the other tells you not to do something. So verse 37 says, don't judge or don't judge people. And verse 38 tells you to give to people. So if you give, you will receive abundantly. But in 37, what is the problem with judging? So as Elder Pamindo was making comments that this is a very interesting study in itself, because it shows a tension between the instruction not to judge and our job function, which is to judge. So this is a concept which in most cases defines our role, I would say, as priests. At the same time, we are also individuals in the same body. So how do we handle this instruction? And when do we know when to judge and not to judge? And in many cases, when we go to cases that this movement has to deal with, often an accusation has come, especially against the leadership or certain individuals within the leadership, that we are judgmental, or even people feel being judged wrongly. So in all those situations, I think this study will help us to put things in context and also to understand methodology will help us to know how to deal with situations. So I think it will be nice for us to read Matthew verse 36 to 40 first, and then we go through step by step. Anyone who wants to read Matthew 22 verse 36 to 40.
Hello, Milton.
Anyone? Yes, thank Nombo.
Okay, Matthew chapter 22.
Yes.
Verses
36 to 40.
Okay. Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets.
Okay. Thank you, Numbo, for reading this. So, as I've mentioned, the two keys that we should always remember, that is context and methodology. So when you look at this chapter, this is a discussion between Christ and someone, right? And the discussion is about how to keep the law. And when you look at the response Christ is going to give, it's something that was noted, that already Christ, in his experience with the Jews, there have been a lot of questions on how he acts, and he was even raising questions on how his actions are even according to the law. So there's a lot which has been going on, but he's going to give counsel which is not actually responding to how he is acting as an individual, but he's actually giving people an understanding of how people should understand the principles which are embedded within the law. And in this context, he actually summarized the 10 Commandments into two great principles, which we call, you can actually see that in this response, he just summarized the 10 Commandments. So this will also lead you to even want to understand this further. You go back to Matthew 22. It's a story that will take you to Exodus, where the whole law is. But we understand that here the law is just summarized into two great principles. So in this principle that was laid down here, there's a question which is asked. What does it mean to love your neighbor? And where are you going to receive the answer from? This is a question which was asked. So the question is, what does it mean to love your neighbor? And where are you going to receive your answer from? So in this study, a reference where to get context of this story, it's given. You are going to get it from the Bible, in particular Leviticus 19, verse 18. It tells you what it means to love your neighbor as yourself, and it gives you a definition. It's not comprehensive one, but it is definitive. It talks about not avenging and not bearing grudges. So what does it mean to avenge? So as I've mentioned, that the two keys that we should always remember in addressing whatever situation or scenario in our life experience or in our studies is to remember context and methodology. So in this case, we are seeing that here we are given a principle on how to love. And when you look at Luke 6, verse 37 and 38, it tells us on how we should behave or act. So these two things, they go in hand. How we love and how we act towards the next person. And within this verse, which we're going to read, let's go to Luke verse 6, chapter 6, verse 37 and 38. Luke 6, anyone who is there, you can read.
Hi, Milton. Can I read it? Luke 6, verse 37, 38.
Yes, thank you.
Judge not, and ye shall not be judged. Condemn not, and ye shall not be condemned. Forgive, and ye shall be forgiven. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, and shaken together, and running over, shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that ye met withal, it shall be measured to you again.
Okay. So already we are seeing that we are going to come and look at Luke 6, verse 37 and 38 in relation to what we have read from Matthew chapter 22, verse 36 to 40. So verse 26 to 40, as we have seen, it gives us the precedence on how or what we are supposed to do. It summarizes or gives us a definition of what we are supposed to do. And Luke 6 gives us limits on how to act, and depending on different situations, as we are going to go through this, we shall see that this response which Christ was giving, it comes down to the whole duty of why we are even raised as a movement. So first we want to look at this question which was raised: what does it mean to love your neighbor? And one thing that has been raised is not to or not to avenge or to keep any grudges. And this context is taken from Leviticus. So just to get a more definitive understanding of what does it mean not to avenge, the word grudge in that verse, for those who have eSwords, it's Strong's 52, H5201. H5201. So I'm just going to use the notes. So it means to keep, to bear, keeper, keepers, kept, or reserved. So the primary definition is to keep. In Brown Driver Briggs, it means to keep, or to keep guard, or to maintain. So what does it mean to grudge? So basically, it means to maintain something or to guard something. And then there are some other references which are put to this word. The Psalms 103 verse 9, which talks about he will not always chide, neither will he keep his anger forever. Song of Solomon 1:6. Look not upon me because I am black, because the sun made me the keeper of the vineyard, but mine own vineyard have I not kept. Jeremiah 3 verse 12. God proclaimed these words towards the north and say, return thou backsliding, saith the Lord, and I will not cause mine anger to fall upon you. I'm merciful, says the Lord, and I will not keep anger forever. So I'm not going to read the last verse. All these verses are showing how the word keep is used. So to just give context on what it means not to avenge. So if it means to reserve something, we have seen that the word that is being used is there's something that we are not supposed to keep. So in a scenario where something has happened, what is this verse telling us to do? That's what we want to understand. So when you translate 5201 into English, it takes a couple of words to give you the context. So it's to be a grudge means to hold on to. This is now what you translate what it means. It means to hold on to bad feelings. It is the word be, or it is the word grudge. So those two words can be used interchangeably, but we need to keep at the back of mind, what is it that is being held on to, or what is it that we bear, or that which we keep. It's all those words are interchangeably referring to the same thing. So the word is really bear, which means to hold on to something, to keep it. That's where you get the word for bear, and which will be now the conclusion of when you do an exercise of wanting to understand the context of this word. This is where you come to. So it says, if someone does something to you and you're holding on to bad feelings, what do? You take vengeance. That's one definition of what it means not to love your neighbor. However, if someone does something to you and you get upset, that's not necessarily wrong. When does it become wrong? When you hold on to it. And what do you do when you hold on to it? You act on it by keeping bad feeling towards your neighbor. So just to check if people are following on this one. So from the verses that we read, we are told we should love our neighbor, right? And the Bible is going to give us how we should do that. We should not hold anything against them. So the question, what we should do, the Bible answers, and it has also answered how. We're going to need now to understand who is this neighbor being referred to. And already we've mentioned that when you look at relationships, we have 5 of them. And in the context of this verse, at one level, we are all neighbors to each other. But at one level, we are not all neighbors at one level. So this will bring a dilemma when it comes to how we respond. So this is the main purpose of this study. So we have to put those pieces in place so that we really understand what we are supposed to do. But so far, is there anyone with a question on what we have covered so far? Question or addition? Are we all understanding?
Morning.
Morning.
I just want to share a thought that when something happens between two people and one offends the other for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
as you have said, that is not where the problem is. There is no problem if I am upset or offended by something someone has done,
Mm-hmm.
or I feel some injustice that has been meted out to me, or for someone to feel upset with me if I have somewhat offended them. That's not where the problem is. As you have said, the problem is when we hold on to it. Because by holding on to something, every thought becomes a seed. So by holding on to it, that seed begins to germinate and it begins to grow. And it becomes a plant. And that plant eventually bears fruit. And what we see from the parable of a mustard seed is that a mustard seed is very tiny. But by the time it has grown into a giant mustard tree, it is capable of great things, much greater than the tiny seed that was planted. So in other words, by holding on to a grudge, that tiny grudge can grow into a huge mountain. And sometimes that's why we find ourselves in situations where we are like, how did this even begin? Because by the time it has grown into a huge mountain, it's even unrecognizable. You now cannot even recognize the mustard tree from the seed that was planted. The two are so vastly different from each other that you almost feel like there is no connection between the two. And I feel it looks like that is where the danger is in holding on to and keeping and reserving, because that little seed or that little grudge does not remain the same size as when it was planted. It definitely grows and it bears huge fruits.
Thank you for that summary of everything that we are going to still look into. Anyone who wants to add to that? So the second question, which is also raised here, is how many of us take vengeance on others? And what does vengeance even look like? So this is a very, I think, deep question, because it can resonate in many angles, which when we look at the word itself from the Bible, it might look or showing a picture of something that is very bad or ugly. But when it manifests through habits and other things, often our mind will not connect those habits to this word, but it's actually the same thing. But not to scare ourselves, we're just going to break down so that we understand. And that is the reason why we study God's word, so that we learn and we understand. So if I do something that you don't like and you have a bad feeling, and then you get into a car accident or you fall and hit your head and lose all your memory, this is a scenario. Then I come to you and you say hello and say hi nicely. Why is that? Because you weren't able to remember that bad experience. If it wasn't, and it wasn't allowed to grow and fester. So this is an example where you had a bad experience with someone. Afterwards, they go into an accident, lose all their memory. You meet them afterwards, they don't show any hard feelings. And the question is, why is that? And in this example, it's because they forgot or lost memory of the experience which they went through. But I want us to see the lesson in this. And now it talks about, or it gives the reason why this person didn't respond to that experience. It says, because you weren't able to remember that bad experience, it wasn't allowed to grow or fester. So which means there was no chance for a response to that bad experience, which in most cases, if there was a response, first step is you hold on to something. And when you hold on to that something, as Elder D has said, it's like a seed which starts to grow. And the words which are selected here, to grow and fester, a perfect example is of fungus. When fungus attached to something, it's a bad biological organism that attaches and feeds on something, takes life out of something. So, and now this example, it's given in a different setting. If you had a plant that was growing and it holds, or it has molds or fungus, you would say the mold was festering and is an ugly type of growth. It's been festering in your heart. It's been growing. Then the person comes to you and you want to show them that you are upset. That's vengeance or vengeance. If you didn't keep those feelings or protect or guard that hurt, there will be no expression of anger or hostility or no response. What people tend to wait for is the thing called sorry. If you say sorry to them, they say, okay, I'll stop guarding this ill feeling. So let's just share our thoughts on what I've read so far. I know all of us who have gone through this experience. It will help us to be honest with ourselves. In many cases, we fail on this part, especially when you look at the complexity of the relationships that we live every day. And I think this is one of the greatest tests that we have to bear after sin when it comes to the issues to do with our feelings.
Hello,
Yes, Temba,
how are you?
I'm good, and you?
Good, good. You know, my question is in a form of a statement that it's like people, are they waiting to be apologized to so that maybe they can be okay and well if maybe there was a problem between the two of us?
Mhm.
Or is it possible for people to just let it go? You understand my question?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like if maybe we had a fusion, me and you, and I'm
Mhm.
waiting for you to say, I'm sorry, Temba. You understand? Before I could be okay. You understand?
Mhm.
There's that, you know, we know that it's all over. But my concern is why people shouldn't they like just let it go? Even if I know that you were wrong to me and you didn't apologize, why don't I just pray to God and say, I nyamkolela. You understand?
Okay, I hear your question. Anyone
Yeah.
who wants to try and respond to Temba?
I hear the question, and it's an interesting one.
Mhm.
Because why am I offended? What if I'm actually wrong? What if I'm actually in the wrong? Why do even these conflicts happen? They happen obviously because of a different point of view, or two people seeing things from a different perspective. And I think that sometimes when these conflicts arise, maybe I'm suggesting, I'm not saying that this is the right answer.
Mhm.
I'm thinking to myself that in many cases, we don't like to be corrected when we are wrong, because there is a
Mhm.
sense of infallibility about us that we carry around. That sometimes when I do something that is offensive to someone and the person is hurt by it, and then myself, I will not back down because I'm infallible. I can't be wrong. On the other side, the person holds on to that grudge because they are also infallible. How dare you hurt my feelings? So I think that it all comes from a pride and a space of pride, really, space of pride where we can't be wrong, and we can't be corrected, and we can't be offended, and we are too right to be maybe even rebuked or corrected or hurt or injured. All of that, I think it just comes from a space of pride. And I think it's humility. Humility is the greatest lesson for humanity, that would help us to cope with even being genuinely offended, if someone has genuinely offended me, I'm not genuinely, offense can't be genuine, I guess. But if it's a clear-cut offense, I've been offended, I need not be on a high horse. In other words, how dare someone offend me? Humility would be the response. So my answer to Temba is that it's pride. It's pride that is the root cause of all of these vengeance stories, and it comes from both sides of a conflict, I think.
Thank you so much. So, okay, there's Nancy. You want to say something? Nancy, okay, the mic is closed. Olani Olondiwe, your mic is on. You want to say something?
Yes, Milton.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Now I just have a question. I hear Elder D says, it's pride. So can I maybe just make a scenario? We find a young girl who is underage, and there comes a man who rapes her and probably infects her with a chronic disease, and probably she gets pregnant and has to abort the child. And now she has to live her life with this chronic disease and the trauma of being raped because there was someone superior to her, which she had no control over or what to do. Probably she doesn't revenge in a way that grudge will that still amount to pride if she finds the difficulty of letting go of those hard feelings towards the
Okay. Thank you, Kolani. I think this is a good question, a good scenario. And I can assure you that Elder D answered one aspect in context of one aspect of this. And what you are raising, it's a different aspect, and it requires a different approach, I guess. So here's the question. And one thing that I want us to remember, the two keys that we mentioned at the beginning, that is context and methodology. So those are the two keys that will always help us to guide our direction. So when you look at the first scenario, where one has been hurt by another, the question that comes from Chamber that is, why is it that people wait for a sorry? I wanted to raise a question on a follow-up question on that. Where did this notion of sorry comes from? Where do we get this from? Like, we've grown up knowing that this is one of the things that is even taught from childhood, that when someone does something to you, either the one who does something wrong needs to say sorry, and the one has to accept and feel okay. Where does this notion comes from? Anyone with an idea? Anyone who wants to try?
Hello. Hi. Hello.
Yes. Deborah and
Please,
then Letwin.
please, can you repeat the question?
So the question, it's a follow-up question I'm raising from what Temba was saying. Temba was saying when someone is offended, the statement I read was that we have been trained or we have been raised to believe in this notion of when someone does something that you don't like, they need to say sorry. And then in a response, you feel good after accepting the sorry, and we let go of our bad feelings towards those who have hurt us. So Temba raised the question, why do we wait for the sorry to come as a condition before we let go? And then my follow-up question was like, where did this notion even come from? Where do we get it from?
Let me try to answer a little bit, but can I answer a little bit?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, you see, if somebody does not come and apologize, if you has been hurt by somebody and has not come to apologize, it is very difficult, I mean, to get rid of the feeling which you have been hurt. But if somebody comes and says sorry, wants to make things right, it is attaches the feeling what he has to you. Then you also respond. But when somebody has not come to you, and you can take time. It takes time to get rid of the bad feeling, the grudges, and what he has done for you or did for you. But eventually, if we pray, it goes slowly by slowly. But if it is a person closer to you whom you are seeing every day, it takes a long time. And I was also going to ask a question, but let me only answer, then later I will ask a question.
All right. Thank you, Deborah. Letwin?
Hi, Milton.
Okay,
Milton.
Letwin first and then Copper. You can come after Letwin, Copper.
Hi, Martin. I don't know where that notion
Letwin?
comes from. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. No, I was saying I'm not sure where that originates, but then I'm trying to think of it, on the physical level, then on the psychological level. Like on the physical, if you are hurt, you've got a wound. Like when you dress it and treat it, it's gonna take time to heal, but then it will heal. But then if you neglect it and it gets exposed to other bacteria and stuff, there's a possibility that wound might even take longer, and it might even like becoming cancer or something. So bringing that on the psychological level, when we are hurt, when someone takes accountability, becomes remorseful, they ask for forgiveness, like it brings closure, to me. And, it's easy to forgive them. It might take time and all that, but then you forgive them and then you move on, you amend, you are okay. But then if someone doesn't, it can really become cancerous and all that. But then I think it's also possible, to even maybe forgive them without them asking forgiveness. But it takes an effort to do that, because we know the brain is very lazy. It always fires in the direction of the default, what it's used to, and all that. But then having to forgive someone without asking for
Mhm.
forgiveness, it really takes an extra effort on that. But I think it's possible to do that. And the challenge is that what gets sometimes makes this thing complicated is that maybe one is right, but then maybe the manner in which they address it to the other person could be what the other one finds it offensive. So you end up having two people that feel wrong. The other was like, no, I was right. But the other one is like, but the manner that in which you are, even though you're right, I see, but then now I'm offended the way you address, and then you end up having two people that, yeah. But anyway, yeah, interesting topic.
Okay. So thank you, Letwin, for that. And I think there are many follow-up questions to what Deborah was saying and even what Letwin is saying. And one thing I'm picking from you, Letwin, is that this notion, I haven't done a research to where did it come from, but I think I was trying to make us see, like, when you compare this with what the Bible says how we are supposed to act, and we contrast the two, it will give us a clear direction. So remember, the theme of our study is loving your neighbor. And we are answering the questions how, and we are given the summary principle in the Bible. That is, we should not hold on to something. And this is something that often occurs on almost, if not daily basis in our experience, where we have to deal with the next person and we know we are different. And the manner in which we have to control the situation, this is coming to the individual who something has happened to them. If I'm to just go ahead of myself, how we should respond. So Kolani have brought a different scenario of something has happened to someone who is, and I think the question that Kolani raised needs us to even differentiate how these two people are related and what exactly has happened to the other. And I think it needs all that. And I think a complete response to Tolani is going to come in the second part of what we are going to go through. So, and I think we can deal with that question before we go to the next section. So the scenario that Tolani has raised, you mentioned specifically, it's a child who is underage, right? Abused by someone who is stronger, older, and this person has no control of protecting themselves. And in that case, I guess your question, Kolani, is, are we saying that person should let go? Or you can refresh my memory, Kolani, your last part of your question, when you have given this scenario, what is the question at the bottom of, after this bad experience this person has gone through?
Okay. Yeah. Basically, my question is how to that person let go of those feelings when they find it difficult to let go. So yeah, basically it's that.
Okay. So here's the question to the class.
Hello?
Yes, Temba.
Yeah,
I think
can.
there was, before Temba you speak, there was I saw the mic. Was it Copper? I forgot to
yes.
give him a chance. Yes. Copper, you
Milton?
had your, yes,
Yes,
you can
Milton.
go ahead. You can go
All
ahead. I
right.
can hear you.
Yes. From my childhood, as I was growing, there used to be a neighbor, and this father was a heavy man. And one day he visited us at home, and we were busy fixing the borehole. And I happened to stand behind him, and he stepped on my toes. And after some time, I felt that pain, and I made him aware. And he quickly recognized that, and he came to me and rubbed my toes. Oh, sorry, my child, I was not aware that you have hurt me. And I was, because of that action, I was able to be okay with it. So when it comes to our lives, when you are hurt or you hurt someone, it takes an understanding of, does the person who has hurt the other one own up the action after maybe he has been made aware of has happened. There's a difference between when you know and when you don't know. When you know that there is something happen, as a person, what is it that it's supposed to happen? Isn't it, when it comes to now putting yourself in that person's shoes? Sorry has to come automatically and without having any reservation, where you own up the actions, that you have done. So by so doing, I think it's a human nature of understanding the pain that you have caused on this particular individual. Now we have three parts, which is physically. You might be hurt physically, where somebody on your body have hurt you. And there's the emotional part, and this psychological part. So from these three, you might have tried to give an antidote for physical part, which you will attend to what has happened on your body. But the emotional and psychological is another aspect, which I think sometimes we fail to attend to this too, which becomes a lifelong impact, which at the end of the day, the relationship between the two people takes longer to heal. So I think that is the other part when it comes to what we are discussing. Yeah, I think that's what comes to my mind when it comes to what you were asking about. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Papa, for that. Timber, you had your mic on. Then Elder D.
Okay, yeah. Referring to Elder D's study last week, we spoke about the last 6 commandments as between humanity, right? And we also spoke about the first 4, that we would love God only when we settle our things as humans first, right? Now, she spoke about why the state imposes law, you see, amongst the people. So what I see here with this scenario of a rape is that I'm not sure if I'm correct, but what I see is rape. Hey, it's another thing. This person rapes this youngster, and then this youngster, as the last speaker says, psychologically, obviously, she's tormented, wada wada. And now, what you expect from the rapist is that he must have remorse. But how does he show remorse? You know, currently we know that we've got like judicial system and what have you. What the judge or the magistrate is gonna see when he's adjudicating upon this matter is that the rapist or maybe the accused person does show remorse or not. You understand? Yes. Because now what I see here is the fact that not only must the rapist go to the victim and say, I'm sorry for what I've done to you, because there are 2 elements I also see here of demon possession and demon controlled, something like that. If a person is demon possessed, mostly those people who don't even know God. But Christians cannot be demon. The remorse part will be adjudicated upon by a third person for that rapist, because he will be arrested, or maybe he will be confined not to see the victim. So it's not easy for them to go and say sorry to them. So I think the judicial system maybe will interpose in between and say sorry on her behalf, something like that. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Timber. I think it's Elder D who had the mic on.
Yes, very interesting discussion that has many dimensions to it. And I hear the sorry story and the necessity of the story. I am not nullifying that. But one question, should we wait for sorry before we can let go? Is this what the lesson is teaching us? Must the story come first before we start letting go? I hear of, slowly by slowly things can become better. But what I want to introduce into this question, especially now when we talk about the rape case, and thank you, Temba, for bringing in this issue of the law, is that even if this man comes around and says sorry, this chronic disease is not going to be cured by the sorry. It will still be there. Does the sorry take away the physical pain, or does it only address the emotional pain? And then the other scenario I wanted to bring onto the picture, now that we are raising, because I guess context is important. Let's say you are a woman in the movement and your husband is not in the movement, and you now stop attending to his needs as they are defined by patriarchy, running around, serving him food, washing his clothes, and being a servant. And this man now is offended by your behavior, but you are offended by his patriarchy. When, so as a woman, you're offended that your husband continues to demand all this action, patriarchal things on you, expecting you to do all these servant duties for him. That is offensive to you as a woman who has come to understand gender equality. But your conduct towards him is also offensive because he doesn't understand equality. And he thinks, I paid Lobola and I married you to perform all these duties, and now you're rebelling. So when it comes to offense, who's supposed to say sorry to who? If there is no, if there is no if our perspectives, if the perspectives of the two individuals are different, like the foundational perspective is different, who is to absolutely have the guarantee that I'm right and the other one is wrong? So who should be saying sorry and who should be letting go? In many circumstances, when people are in conflict, in fact, it's not that easy to just absolutely know who's on the right or who is on the wrong, because the perspectives are already different. So I think what the lesson is trying to tell us is that when you are offended, even before the sorry comes, you need to let go. You need not to keep the thing. Because what if the sorry never comes? What if the sorry has no power to cure the disease? Because this girl will have this chronic disease forever. The sorry, even if it were to come, will not cure that disease. What does this girl need to do in order to live and cope and be psychologically, physically, mentally functional? So that's what I'm introducing into the equation, to say that, in fact, what this lesson, I'm hearing this lesson telling us, I don't know if it goes on to talk about sorry, but I feel that right from the start, the title of the study is Control Your Feelings. When you are offended, because I think it's easy for us to talk when we are the ones that are offended, and it's another story for the offenders. And all the hurt in the world is because I've been offended and no one came to say sorry to me. And the study is saying that, talking about things like keeping, reserving, avenging, vengeance, revenge, all of this is because I'm waiting for the sorry, and the sorry is not coming. So what if the sorry never comes? It sounds to me like this study is telling us that even before the sorry comes, whether it ever comes or not, one needs to not keep, not reserve, so that they don't fester vengeance and revenge and all of that. Because in the first place, can you really 100% guarantee in all circumstances that you are the one that was right? I think it's clear-cut in the rape case. But in other cases, it might not be that clear-cut, and not simply because there is no truth, but simply because people hold different perspectives of what the issue is, what needs to be, how can I put this? The English is just running away. But what I'm trying to say is that in any instance, it might not be because people believe differently. They might not hold the same truth. So because they don't hold the same truth, they may not draw the same conclusions about scenarios. And therefore, in a situation like that, if somebody is getting hurt and otherwise identified as an offender, can you really be sure that you are 100% on the right side of the equation for you to feel hurt or for you to feel offended and then to sit and wait for a sorry? that may never come. And then what happens if the sorry never comes? So the study is saying, give it up before it festers. So we shouldn't even be talking about sorry right now. We should be talking about how we are going to deal with those instances where we feel like we've been mistreated or sidelined or whatever I feel like that's the emphasis of the study, but I stand to be corrected, of course. And making zero reference to the girl that has been raped. I think when it comes to rape, we know it's clear cut that the man is wrong, the girl has been hurt, but to be honest, in reality, the sorry will not take away the disease. I'm not saying he must not say sorry. I don't want to be misunderstood. But I think that's where the law comes in. That's why we have laws to punish those people, because even the sorry itself, even if it were to come, is not going to reverse the disease. This man must go to jail. The law must take its course on him because he has damaged a child. So sorry sometimes, in fact, never really does anything. To be honest, we should, I guess psychologically it feels better. Yeah, I do not deny that.
All right. Thank you, Elder D. And yeah, to add on to this, the second part, because of time, it's gonna like clarify the question which Solani asked it. It's a different experience in a different context, which needs a different approach. So the second part of this study, first thing, it's gonna highlight, especially to the part of the expectation of the offended, as we have heard from Deborah Letwin. There is this expectation, and in most cases, we use that as a premise to want to start considering to let go of our bad feelings towards whatever has happened. So the question which was raised in this was, the real question is, how does God behave towards us? So that question, how does God behave towards us? It's gonna give us, I think, the answer to what we are also expected, because I think the fundamental principle of this study is we know that we learn everything from Christ, and Christ even came to this earth, live as a human being, set us a template. So that will be the approach we are going to use, which in most cases, we feel it's the most difficult, we feel it's the most painful, but there's no other way. And even the Bible does not give us any other option. So I think to add on to what Elder J is saying, in as much as we have been taught, we have learned, and we think we feel it's right to at least get a consolation from someone who hurt us. But the first step is, if we look at how Christ deals with us, we're gonna get a correct template. And the most fundamental principle in this study is that it does not address the offender. It starts with the one who has been offended. We're gonna put offenders in different categories, like what Tolani has shared. A question, it's a different offender which needs a different response. And in the second part, we're gonna also learn that based on this principle on how to treat the neighbor, we've already set the tone that in the same breath, we are a neighbor to each other. But in the same breath, we are also required to be a judge. So the second part is gonna give us when and how do we know in this scenario, we are the judges. How do we know in this scenario, I'm a neighbor, I'm restrained to judge? because in most cases we confuse these two. And if we are to review and relate to our experience, there are many scenarios where we may feel justified to hold on to something because we think if we are to put it in context, we might be comfortable to say this is a neighbor to neighbor issue and the Bible does not allow this to happen. But there is another layer where in a different context, as I have said from the beginning, we know that we are priests, we are required to judge. And those scenarios might look confusingly the same. And we need discernment to separate different scenarios and be able to deal with whatever we go through. So for the sake of time, I think we are going to come back in the afternoon and carry on with this study. I've just one request. I see in the in the class we have 27 people. At least if we can all make it in the afternoon, if possible, because usually most studies we do in the morning before a study is even concluded. In the afternoon, many people might not join. And I feel like what it does, it might leave thoughts or conclusions in one who have listened to one part and not follow the other part with incomplete thoughts on certain things. It will be really helpful to get the full picture of what something is referring to. So it's just a request. If many can be able to join in the afternoon, I'll be very happy. Tolani, your mic is on. You wanted to say something?
Yes, Milton. Just before you close, yeah, I like how Elder T has responded to the question, because it's really not about the perpetrators saying sorry, because sorry doesn't necessarily fix everything. I've seen a lot of perpetrators, they don't normally see the wrongful things they have done to the victims. When you look at patriarchy, it has affected quite a lot of people, in particular women, because they have felt the oppression from it, and then they have been made to feel inferior, and the abuse went on and on. This was just one example which shows how many people are abused and affected in different ways. I kind of liked how Uletin addressed the matter when she addressed the physical bruise that is normally there, that you have to dress it, clean it, and take care of it, and then it will slowly heal, but it will. So just saying sorry to that, even if someone can say sorry if you're physically injured, it won't necessarily heal the wound. So when you look at the emotional and the psychological aspect, I think maybe the same concept can be applied. The challenge is mostly when you look at the physical injury, we are normally taught how to deal with it. Because even on TVs, they show children that if you are hurt, just go to the parent, it must be cleaned, it must be covered, it must, whatever that needs to be done. But emotionally and psychologically, those things are not addressed on the public. So hence people find it difficult to heal. It becomes a strain. So as you're saying, you look at it more in the afternoon, but I think if the emotional and the psychological part can be addressed on how people can heal from patriarchy as they have been affected, especially the women, the LGBTQ, and yeah, if that can be addressed, that's my request.
Okay. So I think just that on its own, it might even need a follow-up study on its own, because as we are going to separate who is neighbor, who is not, who is a judge, who is a criminal, using those examples, when it comes to the case of abuse, there is so much. Some has been shared in the past. Maybe it's a matter of reconnecting and apply the same principles. But recovery from abuse needs a lot. It's more than just even the acknowledgement and all that. There is a whole psychological steps which have to be taken. We've seen with the issues of counseling, even steps to restrain contact. Abuser and abuser and the victim must not. That's a different case scenario which needs a whole different approach. And from what this study is going to show us to the end, we have to put those two side by side. This one side, and we put these other examples one side. I think it will also help us to not. Okay, I'll give you a chance. Okay, you can speak, Deborah.
When we come back, we'll have to get some of the solution you help us some. Like Elder D talked about patriarchal system. We grow up in that system of Adventism. Huh?
Yes.
Now, when we become in this movement, and some of our husbands are not with us in this movement, there are a lot of issues which we need to discuss and find out, because the men, they continue to be irrational, the emotionally asking why this has not happened, why we should not submit. So it become emotionally, and sometimes you force yourself to do things which really like a movement. Women, we are free, but because the other side is not, we have a lot of issue. So you will help us to discuss it. What the way forward? How do we in the movement, we others who are our husbands are in nominal, I mean, who are still there, how do we preach them? How do we respond to equality?
Thank you so much on that question. Yeah, and I think it falls in the same category with the question that Tolani have raised. And let me not promise, even in the afternoon, I don't think we'll fully explore that, but as a request, I've written it down. We can have a discussion specifically on dealing with how to respond, because this is a very deep chronic pain that especially women have lived through for ages. And the most difficult part is that when you're dealing with an unbeliever, some of these habits and abusive behaviors will continue. There is no solution to that. And if one wants to manage that relationship, that's where now even your question falls in. How do you deal with that? So I think that's a different study. We can put time for it. I don't have a problem in being just leading that, but it will be a study that everyone, we can also do our thorough research, and we can be helping each other in that. So I hope we won't forget my request. If many of us can still come back in the afternoon, that would be very good thing for us to do. So close in prayer. I'm praying. Our dear Lord, we thank you for your grace and your mercy. Lord, as we continue to study and learn, even some of the things that we've learned in the past, we ask, Lord, that you may forgive us for not taking time to review and reflect. And as you have given us a lot of information in the past dispensation, and as we are still learning a lot in terms of how the three cases that fall upon humanity has affected us, we pray that you may give us patience and faith in trusting in the word. And we also thank you for the leadership and the movement as we are dealing with issues that the whole world has no answers to. Even us at this point in time, we are still doubting whether we are those people who should be responding to these issues. We are also still learning. We thank you for being patient with us. And I hope and pray that we can all meet in the afternoon and carry on this discussion, as I believe that each and every one of us have been affected and are still being affected with our experience in how we deal with our emotions. I pray that we may continue in giving you trust that you can work within us, and that we may be transformed in your image. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.